Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
It's Christopher Albert, Albert.
And where do you live, sir?
I live at 22 Maple Street, Unit L, Canton, Mass.
And how long have you lived there?
Almost 2 years,
How long have you lived in Canton?
since 1974.
So pretty much your whole life.
Pretty much since I was 4.
Prior to living in Maple, where did you live in Canton before that?
7 Meadows in Canton.
How long did you live at 7 Meadows?
From 2001 to 2021, about 20 years.
If anyone you live with now?
I live with my wife, Julie, my oldest son, who just came home from the Navy, my middle son, Colin, and my youngest son, Dylan.
How long have you and your wife lived?
Roughly, gosh, you're going to kill me. Around 21 years.
You mentioned that you and your wife, Julie, you have 3 sons?
Yep.
How old are they?
My oldest is 25, my middle is 20, and my youngest is 16.
Do you work, sir?
Yes, I do.
What do you do?
I'm self-employed. I own a small pizza shop.
What's the name of the pizza?
It's called D&E Pizza.
How long have you done that?
25 years this March.
Prior to that, did you work in the same industry?
Same industry pretty much my whole life.
Does your wife work?
She does not.
Does she help out with the D&E?
She does some of this behind-the-scenes stuff, yes.
When you lived on Meadows Avenue, did you have occasion to become familiar with someone named John?
Yes, I did.
How is it that you knew John?
So he bought the One Meadows Ave house, I don't know exactly, maybe 2, so he became my neighbor. I guess just from me driving by his house and coming home, I saw him, would wave to him and stuff. That's how I initially became to know who John was.
You mentioned he bought the house at the top of the street, is that correct?
Yeah, it's if you're coming off Pleasant, you take a right down Meadows, it's the first on the right.
On Meadows, about how many?
Between us or on the whole street, you mean?
First down the whole street and then?
Yeah, roughly on that whole street, I would say there's close to 30 houses from top to bottom on both sides.
How about in between 1 and 7?
So there's two houses between mine and John's.
And your house is both odd numbers on?
Same side, yeah.
You said that's how you initially came to know John O'Keefe. How did your relationship?
Over the years, he was friendly with some other folks that I was friends with. So we maybe be occasionally and bump into him, but he would also come to my pizza shop a lot. He would take his nephew, Patrick, in my pizza shop a lot. So it was not uncommon for him to stop by a couple days a week. Usually just grab a slice.
You grew up in Canton, correct?
Yes, I do. I have 6.
What are the names of your 6 siblings?
So my oldest is my older brother, Brian. I have a sister, Kathleen. I have she's older than me. And I'm next in line. And then I have a brother, Kevin, then a brother, Keith, Brendan, and Timmy.
Where is it that you fit in that sort of?
I'm the 3rd oldest.
Now, your older brother, Brian, what does he do for?
He's a Boston police officer, or he was. He's recently retired.
And your brother, Kevin, what is he?
He's a Canton police officer.
And John O'Keefe, were you familiar with what he did?
Yes. Yeah, I knew he was a Boston police officer as well.
Sir, if I could turn your attention to January 2020, do you recall that day?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall what day of the week that was?
It's a Friday, I believe.
Were you working at the D&E Pizza Shop on that day?
I was.
At some point in time in the afternoon, who, if anyone of note, came into?
John came in that day with his nephew, Patrick.
Do you recall, what did they get that day?
They just got 2 slices of pizza, if I recall correctly.
What, if any, conversation did you have with Mr. O'Keefe as far as?
So he asked me if I had any plans that night. I said, unfortunately, it's Friday and I'm working pretty much till close. I said, but it's my nephew's birthday and I know a bunch of people are heading out and I was planning on meeting up with them later when I got out of work. So I think I said to him, I'll shoot you a text later if you're around. Maybe we can hook up.
In that sense, sort of, how would you describe your relationship with?
Oh, it was a good relationship. Yeah.
Would you consider yourself frank?
Yeah, absolutely.
Pushing forward on January 28th, about what time was it if you know that you closed up?
So the shop stays open until 10. I know that I left sometime a little bit before 10. I had my wife drop me off some clothes it was a ritual because those nights are tough for me to get out early and go home. So she dropped me off some clothes and I remember just changing quick, washing up a little bit and then leaving. So I think I left before the store actually closed a few minutes.
Now, during the time or prior to you leaving the pizza shop, what, if any, conversation via text?
He asked where I was. I said I was still working. He said something like, why don't you talk to the boss, see if you can get out of there. I just said, I'm married to this place. It's tough. I'll text you when I leave. Then I shot him a text, I think, when I got down to Waterfall, and I said, where are you? Go ahead.
And where did he say that you were?
He was at CF McCarthy's.
Are you familiar with both of those establishments as far as CF McCarthy's?
Yes, I am.
With regard to your pizza shop, where is McCarthy's in relation to that and where is Waterfall?
So if I was sitting at my front door looking out, CF McCarthy's would be to my right and Waterfall would be down the street, diagonal, maybe 200 yards on the opposite side of the street.
So both walking distance from where you
Yeah.
Your home on Maple, where is that in those businesses on Waterfall?
Maple Street is probably from my pizza shop is maybe like a 5-minute walk. It's not far, and a little closer to Waterfall. Maybe it's a 7-minute walk from Dean, like a 5-minute walk from Waterfall.
Are there any in the area where you live? Is there any?
Yes, I live behind the library. You take a left on Maple, and the library is 2 buildings after me on the left-hand side, and the town hall is a little further down on the right.
The library that's around the library.
Besides what's inside schools, yeah, that's the only public library.
So again, I'm sorry, what time is it that you leave D&E to go?
Just before 10, maybe like 9:50-ish.
As far as meeting up with people, who is it that directs you to go to Waterfall?
I think my wife said, "Are you coming down? Are you there?" She was down there, so I had a conversation with her. I think that's how I headed down there.
You went there to meet her?
Yeah, she was down there.
You've been to the Waterfall before?
Yes.
So when you walked into the Waterfall, where did you go as far as, who, if anyone, did you recognize?
So it's pretty much when you walk in, it's just open. My wife was there. Matt was there. Matt McCabe was there. Jen McCabe was there. My sister-in-law, Nicole, was there. My niece, Caitlin, was there. I think when I first walked in, that's who was there.
You mentioned Jennifer and Matthew McCabe, is that right?
Yeah.
How do you know them?
Oh, I didn't grow up with Jen. She's younger than me, but she's lived in Canton for a long time. My brother Brian is married to her sister, Nicole. So I've known her pretty much my whole life.
You were testifying earlier about some of the people that you and Mr. O'Keefe and you and Mrs. McCabe, be one of those people.
Yes, yeah.
When you walk in relative to the establishment, whereabouts were those situated?
So they were on a table that was close to the bar. It's set up. They have 3 tables in a row. I think we were maybe either in the middle or the next table to the bar.
Those 3 sort of tables together, if you know about how long a table are we talking about?
Let's say they're about a 6-foot table.
And it was a low top, high top, or something?
It's a high top.
And located close to the bar, is that correct?
Yes.
What, if anything, do you recall from that evening as far as entertainment?
There was a live band that was playing.
About how close to your table was the live band? Fair to say, pretty loud in there. When you walk in, where do you go in reference to sort of the other?
Right over to the table, and I think I walked, said hello to them, sat down.
And what, if anything, did you order when
Ordered a beer.
Did you eat while you were there as well? Throughout the course of the evening, what is it? You're at bar, so you're drinking, correct?
Sure.
What were you drinking?
Miller Lite.
Is that sort of normally what you would drink when you go out?
Yeah.
You mentioned that initially when you get there, it's yourself, brother Brian, his wife, and your niece, Caitlin. Is that correct?
No, my brother Brian wasn't there yet. Yeah, it was Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe, my wife, Caitlin, and Nicole.
Thank you for correcting.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry.
At some point shortly after that, or at some points, who, if anyone else, arrives and joins your table?
My brother Brian and a gentleman named Brian Higgins, they came and joined us.
Is Brian Higgins, is that someone that you had met previously?
Yeah, a few times.
How did you know him?
I don't know how I initially met him, but I probably seen him around. I knew that he worked as an ATF agent. I knew that he worked inside the Canton Police Department, so I think I knew him from that, just being around.
So you knew him through your brothers, either Brian or Kevin?
Yeah, that's the only way I met him.
How long after you arrived was it that?
Oh, it's probably within 35 minutes, roughly.
What, if anything, did you know about where they had been prior to it or what they had been doing earlier?
So they were in New York at a police officer's funeral. They went there for the ceremony. A snowstorm was coming, so they decided that they were going to drive back early to beat the storm.
You mentioned as far as going out on that particular evening, what was that in reference?
So my nephew, Brian, it was his birthday.
So when you say your nephew, Brian, whose son is that?
So that's my older brother, Brian's son, Brian.
So
Brian Jr., yeah, we call him Brian Jr.
was he present at the waterfall that night?
He wasn't, no. He decided that he didn't want to go out.
When your older brother Brian and Mr. Higgins come in, where is it?
So they walk in and they come directly over to the table.
At some point later in the evening, who, if anyone else, also joins your group?
John O'Keefe came with Karen Read.
How did you know Karen Read?
I met her a couple times. She also had been in the pizza shop a couple times. Driving by the street when I would come home, she would be outside One Meadows.
Just to be clear, when we're speaking about Miss Read, do you see her in the courtroom?
Yes, I do.
You just identify as to where
She's sitting right over there between the 2 attorneys.
Just ask for record reflect identification. Prior to Mr. O'Keefe coming into the waterfall, you mentioned some text communications with him, is that correct?
Yes.
What, if any, other communications did you have with Mr. O'Keefe before you?
I don't think nothing before I got to the waterfall.
Not before you got to the waterfall, before Mr. O'Keefe got to the waterfall.
With Mr. O'Keefe.
Yes.
Just that where was he? Where were we going? Where was he going to be?
What, if any, communications you recall in regards to who was there or who was going to be?
Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think at some point he said, "Who's there?" I said, "My brother Brian." I said, "Brian." And he said, "Your brother Brian?" I said, "Yeah, Brian and Brian Higgins are there." He said, "Where's your brother Kevin?" I said, I have no clue, LOL or something.
When Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed come into the bar, where is it they go?
They walked directly in, came towards our table, just to strike up conversation. I think John came over to my wife and said hello to her first, maybe. Just got with the group, started talking.
Fair to say Ms. O'Keefe knew your wife, Julie, as well?
Yes,
How would you describe their relationship?
good relationship.
When Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant come over to the area where you and your wife is, what thing did you observe?
When they came over, I think they started talking. At one point, when they first came over, the defendant came in with the glass underneath her jacket. I thought that was funny, and I laughed about it and made a comment about it.
What, if anything, did you notice about the glass?
It was just a tall cylinder glass with some clear liquid in it and a lime.
That was under a coat when she came in.
Yeah, it was like she pulled it out.
If you know about what time was it that Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed came in?
I got there close to 10, I would say 10:45-ish, to the best of my recollection.
And following sort of the blows and all that kind of stuff, as far as after they first came in, where did they go?
I think the defendant sat down, and I think well, John went to the bar and got a beer.
Is that sort of what John would?
Yeah, Bud Light, I think.
And you mentioned that the defendant sat down. Where does she sit down in relation to you and your wife?
I think right not next to my wife.
With regard to just how would you describe the general sort of tone or demeanor within the group at the waterfall?
It was fine. Everyone was just having a good time.
No arguments,
No, not at all.
specifically between Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant. What, if anything, did you?
I didn't notice anything abnormal.
If you recall, what was Mr. wearing on that?
Blue jeans, baseball hat, and like a pullover light sweatshirt type of grayish garment. I don't know what you would call it. It wasn't like a hoodie. It's like a long sleeve shirt.
Is that what he was wearing when he walked in?
Yes.
At any point in time, did you see him with a jacket or anything like that?
No.
As far as your observations of Mr. O'Keefe, what, if anything, did you observe about that clothing as far as hair and movement of it at all?
No, I didn't notice anything. It looked fine to me.
As far as Mr. O'Keefe's person himself, what, if anything, did you observe as far as any injuries or anything like that?
Didn't see anything. Looked normal.
After Mr. O'Keefe went to the bar and got a beer, do you know where he went from there?
Just came back over to the table, started chatting people up.
When you say the table, was that sort of your area or was there a different?
No, the same table, the same high top. Some people sitting, some people standing.
As far as this length described, about 3 or so of that, if you recall, where were people waiting around?
I was sitting at one point because I was eating. So I was sitting in a seat. My wife was sitting in another seat. Matt and Jen was sitting in another seat. I recall John standing a lot. I don't think he sat at all. I think Karen was sitting at one point, probably situated near, maybe across from my wife or next to my wife.
As far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, do you recall anything specific that you discussed or talked about while you were there that night?
No, nothing in particular.
Throughout the course of time that you were there, what, if any, discussion was there as to going someplace or wanting to go someplace after?
We have this little ritual that when one of my nieces or nephews turn 21, we go back to the pizza shop after hours and turn on the oven and make pizzas and stuff. There was talk about going back there. Miss Reed asked if we could go back and make pizzas up at my pizza shop a couple times. There was some talk about maybe after. Someone mentioned going back to my brother's house after.
To be clear, your brother's house, which brother?
My brother Brian.
Where did your brother Brian live?
34 Fairview.
Familiar with that address?
Yeah, I used to live there, grew up there.
So prior to being your brother Brian's house, was that your parents' house?
My parents' house, yeah.
That's you and your siblings essentially grew up from.
Yes.
As far as going over to your pizza shop to make pizzas, things like that, is that something that the defendant talked about once or more than once?
A few times.
You referenced this ritual when one of your nieces or nephews turned 21, and it was your nephew Brian Jr.'s birthday the following day, is that correct?
Yeah.
Was he turning 21 at that point?
I think so. I can't remember exactly if he was 20 or 21. I think he was turning 21 now.
In relation to this evening of January 8th, that the ritual you were talking about, when was the last time before January 28th that you had done that?
Trying to see who else turned 21. Can't remember exactly. I know it was recent. I remember doing it. I just can't remember the date.
That's all I'm really asking.
Yeah.
Was it recent to January 28th?
Yeah, it was sometime before that, but within a couple of months, I think someone turned 21. Maybe we just went there.
So what, if any, conversation from your end, as far as obviously it's your pizza shop, so
Yeah.
what, if any, conversation your end was there in reference
To doing that night. So we were doing a weight loss competition, me, Matt McCabe, and my brother Brian. We had like 2 more weeks left in it, and we do it. Every year it's a charity. We do it. The proceeds go to scholarship funds. So I said no because we were doing this weight loss challenge and I just didn't want to give in and eat pizza 2 weeks before we were weighing in.
Your wife, Julie, how long was she at the bar?
Not long when I got there. She probably was only there for maybe 35, 40 minutes. She had a migraine. She wanted to go home, so she left.
Indicated she ran that she was going home.
Yeah, she didn't feel well.
Was that or after Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed?
She left after they arrived. So then she must have left later than that. Yeah.
Later on in the evening, what, if anything, did you buy for the group?
So at one point towards the end of the night, I bought a round of fireball shots for the group.
Who partook in that?
I don't remember exactly. Probably half of the people there took them. I don't remember everyone. I wasn't paying attention.
When you say towards the end of the night, when was it that things wrapped up?
I think they called last call right before 12. I pretty much right before 12, it all started wrapping up.
As far as the group that you were with at the high top table, if anyone from that group left?
Left first, obviously. She didn't feel well. She left earlier. Brian and Brian left. My sister-in-law left. Matt and Jen left. I left probably second to last. I probably left last with John and Karen, or right around the time that John and Karen left.
As far as you're leaving around the time you're walking out together or seeing them outside, or where is it you recall leaving at the same time?
My best recollection is I walked out roughly the same time, and I walked out the building and I come up Washington to the right. They were either shortly after or shortly before me, and they walk up to the left.
When you say walk up Washington, did you walk home that night?
Yeah, I walked home.
When you came out of the bar, what, if anything, did you notice about the weather or what was going on?
It just started snowing. It was cold out. It just started snowing. The ground had a light coat.
Could you still see the street? Or
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could still see it.
You mentioned you walked out towards Washington, and Mr. Keaton and Ms. Reed did as well.
Yes.
Which direction? Did you go in the same direction, different direction?
When you come out the building, you have to go to the left in order to get onto Washington. So I come out to the left and then go to the right onto Washington. They would go to the left on Washington.
Walking
Opposite directions. Yes.
As far as throughout the course of the evening, did you have occasion to see what Mr. O'Keefe, you mentioned that he went to the bar. Was that the only beer that you saw him having, or did he have?
I'm sure he had more than one. Yeah, I saw him with more than one.
So you saw him, but essentially what I'm asking is throughout the course of the evening when you saw him drinking, other than maybe a fireball shot, you saw him just drinking beer.
Just beer.
As far as Ms. Reed was concerned, what, if anything, did you observe her drinking?
Just a clear liquid in a glass. I assume it was some sort of vodka drink.
Was that the same glass that she had come into the establishment with under her coat, or was it a different glass later on?
I believe it was the same one.
You leave from the waterfall and you're walking home, is that right?
Correct.
Fair to say you didn't go to 34 Fairview that
I
night?
did not.
About what time was it that you got?
Sometime between, I'd say 5 past and 10 past 12, somewhere in that window.
Was your wife home at that point?
She was.
As far as your children were concerned, how many of your 3 sons were living with you?
At that time, 2. My 16-year-old, he wasn't 16 years old at the time, but my 16-year-old and my 20-year-old.
So 16 and 20 now.
16 and 20 now, so that'd be 14 and 18 then.
And so your oldest son,
He was in the San Diego in the Navy.
and if, or did you check or anything as far as your kids when you got home? Were they there?
No, I ran right upstairs. I was freezing. I went right into my room.
Essentially, you went to bed, is that correct?
Correct.
With the court permission, I would ask to publish for the jury just a small portion from what's been marked as Exhibit 53, the waterfall surveillance. If I could have from Channel 3's video, you could just pause there for a moment. Mr. Albert, looking up at the screen, do you recognize generally what's picked up on the screen?
Yeah, so those are the tables that I was speaking of that are like, there's 2 or 3 in a row. Yep.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Coach Sean?
Yes.
I don't have any.
My fault. Thank you very much. So what I'm handing to you is a laser pointer. Basically, just click that button. Using that laser pointer that I just handed to you, if you could attention to about where the high top is and then about where you were seated at that high top.
So here's the high top. And I can't really see myself, to be honest with you, this way. But somewhere, I think I ate on this
As far as the bar is concerned, where would that?
back here. Wait, this is, oh, so this is from walking into the waterfall. So the bar is after, so that's the high top next to the bar's back there.
As far as the band that you were talking about that was playing, if you could direct the jury's attention where that.
On this side over here, it's fuzzy, but that's it.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to fast forward to 10:55, I would ask if you could play that from 10:54 to about 10:56. I'm sorry, if you could just pause briefly, Ms. Gilman. Mr. Albert, looking up at the screen, as far as the door that you came out, the door that you eventually exited from the waterfall, do you see that general area and where that is in the video?
No, because I think it's offline here. I think it would be over here.
So it would be off towards the left.
Yeah, like down this way.
As far as 2 individuals walking in, do you recognize who those individuals are?
I do. That's John O'Keefe and Miss Reed.
And again, Ms. Gilman, if you could just run it through 10 minutes. You can take that. Mr. Albert, as far as your son, Colin, do you know where he was that night?
Yes. So he was at my brother Brian's house for my nephew's birthday.
And he came home sometime after you, is that correct?
Correct.
Essentially, you came in, went to bed. Do you know what time son came home that night?
I know that.
Do you know, just answer yes or no whether you.
Yes,
How do you know that?
because he opened the bedroom door and said, "Good night, guys. I love you. I'm home."
About how long after you got home was it that?
I'd say within 10 minutes.
And as far as coming into your room, is that something that was required of your kids when they came home?
He would always do that. Yeah. That was something just to let us know that they were home.
Turning your attention to the next day on the 29th, about obviously at some point you woke up, do you recall about what time that was?
8-ish, 8:30-ish.
So sometime between 8 and 8:30?
Yeah. I was still in bed. I woke up, but I didn't leave my room.
What was it that, or who was it that woke you up?
At that time, I just woke up on my own.
And when you woke up, what happened after?
Shortly after I woke up, my wife entered the room, but that was a little bit later. I don't know exactly what time. And she informed me that something had happened to John.
What was it that she told you?
I don't know what she said, but basically that John had died,
What, if anything, did she indicate to you as to where John?
that he was found somewhere on the front lawn of 34 Fairview.
And receiving that information, where did you go or where did you?
I was in shock. I was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? I jumped up and she said, let's go over to your brother's house.
About what time was it, that you?
Sometime approximately after 9 o'clock. I don't remember exactly what time we went over there, maybe 9 or 9:30.
When you arrived at your brother's house, with anyone?
To the best of my from what I remember, I was there, my wife was there, my brother Brian, Nicole, Brian Higgins was there. I believe Matt McCabe was there and Jen McCabe was there.
When you came into the home, where were they in relation?
Just sitting at the kitchen table.
If you know about how long did you stay at your brother's house when you came over?
Maybe an hour.
Where did you go from there?
Afterwards, just home.
As far as subsequent to this, at some points within the days that followed, you have occasion to speak with some troopers or members of the state police?
Yes, I did.
How many troopers from the state police did you talk to?
2
Where was that?
at my condo.
Thanks. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Mr. Albert, you and I have never met, correct?
I don't believe so.
You testified that you've essentially lived in Canton your whole life, correct?
Correct.
Moved there when you were 4 years old.
Correct.
The house to which you and your family moved was 34 Fairview, correct?
Yes.
You lived there for how long?
30 years?
You currently own DA Pizza in Canton.
Correct.
I believe you testified that you've owned it for approximately 25 years.
Correct.
Clearly, you have a lot of ties to the city of Canton. Would you agree?
Sure.
You live there.
Yes.
You work there.
Yes.
You have family there. You raised your kids there.
Yep.
You also are a town selectman in the city of Canton. Or
Recently elected.
the town of Canton, I should say.
It's a town. Correct.
Not only that, but your brother, Kevin Albert, is a police officer in Canton.
He is.
Your brother, Brian Albert, with whom you grew up, is currently retired, but had been a Boston police officer who lived in Canton, correct?
Correct.
You would agree with me that Brian Albert only moved from Canton after John O'Keefe was found dead on his front lawn, correct?
Can you rephrase that?
I'll phrase it the exact same way and ask for a yes or no if you can do that. You would agree with me that your brother Brian Albert only moved from Canton after John O'Keefe was found dead on his front lawn?
Objection.
Can you answer?
Yeah, I just don't understand the phrase, but he moved shortly after that. Yes.
Your brother Tim Albert lives with your parents in Canton, correct?
Correct.
Tim Albert and your parents live directly across the street from the Canton Police Department, correct?
Correct.
Do you know whom they bought that house from?
Objection.
The objection stayed.
But you still live in Canton
Correct.
with your wife Julie Albert,
Correct.
your son Colin Albert, correct?
Along with my other 2 sons. Yes.
You would agree that your entire family has deep roots in the town of Canton.
Yes.
You would agree with me that the Albert family is well known in the town of Canton.
We have a big family.
You would agree with me that the Albert family is a powerful family in the town of Canton.
Objection.
Sustained.
As a town selectman, you have some power, do you not?
I'm one of 5 selectmen.
As a police detective, Kevin Albert has some power, does he not?
Objection.
Sustained.
You also have close friends on the Canton Police Department, do you not?
Objection.
All allowed.
I have some.
You know that Massachusetts State Police Trooper Michael Proctor is the lead investigator on this case, correct?
I know that.
One of your wife's best friends is Michael Proctor's sister, Courtney Proctor, correct?
Objection.
That's sustained. You've got another witness. You can ask that of, Mr. Yannetti.
Proctor, correct?
Objection.
Allowed.
Yes,
You know her to be Michael's sister, correct?
that's correct.
You attended Michael Proctor's sister's wedding, correct?
Objection. May we approach?
I believe you testified, sir, that you've known Michael Proctor's sister for about 20 years.
Objection.
I don't think he said that, but we'll let that stand and then move on, please.
About 20 years.
Sure, if that's,
I believe, didn't you testify that on direct examination just moments ago when Mr. Lally was asking you questions?
Objection, Your Honor.
Next question, Mr. Unity, objections?
How long have you known Michael Proctor for?
I mean, I know he's Courtney's sister, brother. I couldn't tell you exactly how long I've known him for.
About 15 years or so?
Roughly.
All right. Who is Kenneth Berkowitz?
The former Canton police chief.
How do you know him?
His son and my son are the same age, so they played on some sports teams when they were younger together. I think that's when I first came to know.
You became friendly with him.
I became friendly with him, sure.
How would you characterize your relationship with him?
Friends,
You've seen him socially.
really.
You've been out for drinks with him.
I think maybe once,
You've known him for how long?
20 plus years.
You say you've only been out with him for drink one time in those 20 years?
I can't even remember if it was with drinks one time. Yeah, no.
What other types of activities have you done together?
I can't think of any. I think he came to an event that I held one time. That's about it.
Have you been out with him in a group setting?
That event that I just mentioned, yeah.
What event was that?
It was my campaign event when I was running for select board.
He was one of your supporters.
He came by.
Did he donate money to your campaign?
I think he did.
Sir, I'm going to display a photograph with the court's permission on the screen, and I'd ask you to take a look at it if you let the jury
Do you have a
know.
hard copy of it? Why don't you show it to the witness?
Thank
and
you,
then
Dad. Thank you, Ron.
We'll take that into evidence and then.
That makes sense. Sir, I've handed you a photograph. Do you recognize what that depicts?
Yes,
What does it depict?
me and Kenny Berkowitz.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of you and Kenny Berkowitz?
You mean is the picture us? Yes,
I would offer that, Your Honor. Mr. Albert, that's obviously you on the right and Kenny Berkowitz on the left.
correct.
Have you seen that photo before?
I believe I've seen it.
Do you recall when?
I believe that's my fundraiser for when I was running for the select board, the event that I spoke of earlier.
When would it have been that you saw that photo?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it was on my Facebook page when I was running for select board. It looks familiar.
Has Mr. Lally shown you that photograph?
No,
Has he informed you that the defense would be introducing that photograph during this trial?
nope,
Give me your photo down, Mr. Davis. And the lights and all. You would agree with me that one of your functions, selectman, is to oversee public safety in the town?
yes,
You would agree that the police department is a key component of public safety in the town of Canton?
yes,
So part of your duties as a town selectman is to oversee the Canton Police Department, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll let him have it. Is that one of your duties?
I believe so. I'm new at that. I'm recently elected, so I'm just going through it. But yeah, I believe so.
You became a town selectman shortly after Kenny Berkowitz retired, correct?
I'm not sure when Kenny retired.
But you would agree with me that Kenny Berkowitz has both personal and professional relationships with you and members of your family, correct?
Can you rephrase that?
You would agree with me that former Canton Police Chief Kenny Berkowitz has both personal and professional relationships with you and members of your family.
Objection, Your Honor. Same question.
Go ahead and answer that question.
I'm not sure. I agree with that question.
Your brother Kevin Albert worked under Chief Berkowitz, correct?
Correct.
Would you consider that to be a professional relationship?
With them too, yes.
Your brother Brian Albert attended Chief Berkowitz's retirement party, did he not?
I have no idea.
But your brother Brian is also a friend of Kenny Berkowitz, is he not?
He may be, not sure.
As far as your ties to the Canton Police, you would agree with me that Lieutenant Michael Blank is a member of the Canton Police Department, correct?
He is.
You've been friends with him for years, correct?
I've known him for a long time.
You've been childhood friends with him since the age, correct?
Somewhere around there, maybe earlier.
You're tight with him.
I don't know if I'd call it tight.
He's not an enemy of yours, is he?
Oh, God, no.
No, he's a friend of yours, correct?
Sure.
Does sure mean yes?
Yes.
Your older brother, Brian, you've already testified, was a Boston police officer for years, correct?
Correct.
He achieved some notoriety on a television show, did he not?
Objection.
He was in the fugitive unit.
Correct.
You know that your brother Brian was also a trained boxer, correct?
Objection.
Sustain.
Brian is a lot bigger guy than you are, correct?
Objection.
Sustain.
Your brother Brian Albert is someone who is close to his family, correct?
Yes.
When I say his family, I'm talking about not just his wife and children, but also his extended family, correct?
Yes.
You were part of his family, obviously.
Yes.
Your son Colin is part of his family, correct?
Yes.
The Albert family is close, correct?
Yes.
You all essentially grew up in Canton, correct?
Correct.
You hung out with each other growing up, correct?
We were siblings.
Of course.
Yes.
You still hang out with each other quite often, correct?
Like all of us,
In various combinations.
we have different relationships with my siblings.
Sure, but you see some more than others, but you hang out with your family, do you not?
Yeah, mostly during holidays,
You go out for drinks together, correct?
occasionally,
You're protective of each other, correct?
like most families.
If someone had a dispute with a member of the Albert family, Brian wouldn't be happy about, correct?
Objection.
You know that Brian would stick up for your kids, correct?
Objection.
Your son Colin is particularly close to your brother Brian, is he not?
Objection.
Do you know?
Yes.
In fact, your son Colin was a football player through high school, was he not?
Yes.
What was his number?
In high school,
Yes.
34, I believe.
Was that for 34 Fairview?
I don't think so.
You testified you moved to Maple Street in Canton not long before January 28th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
Before that, you lived at 7 Meadows Ave in Canton?
Correct.
That was when John O'Keefe was your neighbor, correct?
Correct.
You testified he was a couple of houses away from you?
Yes.
He was your neighbor for a series of years, was he not?
Yes.
While he was living in the neighborhood, you knew that he was working as a Boston police officer, correct?
Correct.
You were familiar with him, correct?
What do you mean? What do you mean familiar?
You knew who he was. You became familiar with
He's
him.
my neighbor. I knew who he was.
You knew that he was not married.
Yes.
At a certain point, you knew that he was dating Karen Read.
Yeah, at some point.
You would agree with me that your family has a police background, sir, correct?
I wouldn't agree with that statement.
Two of your brothers are or were police officers, correct?
Out of 7 of us, yes.
You knew friends of your brothers who were also police officers or in law enforcement, correct? You had already testified that some members of the Canton Police Department, correct?
Correct.
You socialized with police officers, did you not?
Have I? Sure.
You've been to bars with police officers, correct?
Correct.
You've drank with police officers, right?
Sure.
You were friendly with police officers, correct?
Yes.
With regard to, I'd like to ask you some questions about people specifically connected to this case. We've established that Lieutenant has been a friend of yours for years, correct?
Yes.
We've established that former police chief Kenneth Berkowitz in such a way that you feel comfortable calling him before this jury Kenny Berkowitz, correct?
I know Kenny. Yep.
He's actually donated to your campaign when you were running for town selectman, correct?
Correct.
You also knew Michael Proctor prior to January 29th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
You've attended social events together with him, have you not?
Objection.
I'll let that one question.
Couple.
At some point, Michael Proctor came to question you, did he not?
Along with another trooper. Correct.
At the point in time when Michael Proctor came to question you, you knew who he was, correct?
Yes.
You knew him by face, correct?
Correct.
You knew him by name, correct?
Correct.
There was no need for Michael Proctor to formally introduce himself to you, was there?
Objection.
What did he say when he first walked in the door in terms of introductions?
Objection.
Same.
Without getting into the precise wording, you'd agree with me that there was no need for Michael Proctor to formally introduce himself to you for that meeting, correct?
Yes.
He didn't need to say, "How do you do? I am Michael Proctor," correct?
No.
No. Do you consider the Proctors to be the Albert second family?
Objection.
Do you consider that?
No.
You are aware that there are members of the Proctors family who have posted publicly that the Alberts
Objection,
are
Your
their
Honor.
second family, correct?
So the objection is sustained and I'm striking that question.
At the time that Trooper Michael Proctor showed up to question you, sir, you knew that Karen Read had been charged in this case, correct?
Yes.
You knew that John O'Keefe had been found dead on your brother's lawn, correct?
Correct.
Did it occur to you that it was odd that the state police sent somebody from the Proctor family to interview you?
Objection, Your Honor.
On February 10th of 2022?
Sustained.
You've testified that on January 28th of 2020, that day, that Friday that you were working, John O'Keefe stopped in pizza your shop, correct?
Correct.
There was discussion about whether you would be going out that night and if so, where you would be, correct?
Correct.
You've previously, on direct examination, characterized your relationship with him as being friends, correct?
Correct.
It's fair to say, however, that prior to January 28th of 2020, you had never exchanged personal information with John O, correct?
You mean, I'm sorry, you mean like phone numbers or,
You
but
didn't have a cell number prior to that day.
no, I didn't.
At that point in time, he had lived in your neighborhood for 4 to 5 years, correct?
Correct.
I believe you testified that night after working, you went out around 10 minutes of 10 p.m.
Roughly.
Before going out, did you have anything alcoholic to drink?
I think I may have had a beer at my pizza shop. I don't remember exactly.
So you have a refrigerator there that you can keep drinks cold, correct?
Among other things.
You do have beers in that fridge for
Sometimes.
personal use.
Sometimes.
Do you know how many beers that you would have had before going out?
No.
Would you have drank that beer as you were cleaning up at the end of the night?
Probably.
Did you have anything to eat at the pizza shop? When did you last eat before you went out at 9:50 or so?
When did I last eat?
Yes.
It's a long time ago. I'm not sure.
You knew that your wife Julie was starting the night at CF McCarthy's, correct?
Yes.
You couldn't meet her there because you were still working, right?
Correct.
But at some point you heard that Julie and others were headed to the waterfall, correct?
Yes.
That was where you planned to go after you closed up the pizza.
Correct.
With regard to the time that you left, 9:50 or so is your best estimate of when you're closing the doors and walking over to the waterfall?
Yes.
The waterfall is a short walk to Dean Pizza,
Yes.
maybe about 3 minutes.
About that.
Your plan was to walk there that night, correct?
Correct.
You had not taken a car to Dean Pizza anyway, right?
I don't believe so.
So what time did you get to the waterfall?
Shortly before 10. I don't know exactly.
All right. I believe you've testified that John O'Key, Karen Read were not there when you arrived, right?
Correct.
The food that you ordered, do you remember what appetizers you would have gotten?
Probably potato skins and some sort of chicken tenders. I would guess. It's 2 years ago, so I don't remember exactly.
All right. Did you order a drink along with the appetizers?
I believe so.
All right. And that would have been the Miller Lite that you talked about?
Correct.
Not long after you got there, Brian Albert and Brian Higgins showed up, correct?
Correct.
You had met Brian Higgins prior to that night.
Yes.
In fact, you had testified that you had seen him around quite a bit, correct?
A few times.
You knew him, I believe your testimony was, from him working inside the Canton police station, correct?
I knew that he worked there.
Did you testify on direct examination, quote, I knew him from working inside Canton PD?
Yes.
You've been inside Canton Police, correct?
Maybe twice in my life.
You knew that Brian Albert, your brother, and Brian Higgins were friends, correct?
I knew they knew each other.
So are you saying that they were acquaintances?
No, I guess they're friends.
You guess they're friends?
Yeah, they're friends.
Was there something confusing about my question the first time I asked it?
Objection, Your Honor.
In any case, would you agree that shortly before Brian Albert and Brian Higgins arrived at the waterfall, or shortly after they did, there was a couple whom I believe you call them a Greek couple because their last name is difficult to pronounce for everybody. But do you remember them being there?
Yes.
All right. If I mention the name Kolakis, does that ring a bell?
That's them, yeah.
That's them. Okay. The whole group was either standing or sitting around a high top table.
Correct.
At 9:45 p.m., you texted John O'Keefe while you were at the waterfall, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree with me that the language of your text was, quote, get over here or I'll fuck up your lawn, end quote?
That was one of the texts.
I've placed a document before you, sir. Take a look at that and tell the jury whether or not you recognize it.
Yeah, I recognize it.
What is it?
It's a text message, 2 text messages.
Who are the participants in that text exchange?
Me and John.
What is it that you said at what time?
So the first
May we
one,
approach?
As I did yesterday. So before you consider any electronic communication in your deliberations, you must first find that it's more likely true than not true that the person who either authored or sent or created or transmitted the communication was in fact John O'Keefe and this witness, Chris Albert. If you do not find that it's more likely true than not that John O'Keefe sent one or that this witness was the person who sent the message or transmitted it, then you may not consider it in deciding this case. You have clarification a bit, Mr. Yannetti?
I do, yes. Just for the record and for the juror's edification, this is part of Exhibit B, which is already in evidence, but I would ask that this particular exchange be posted on the screen with the court.
Sure.
So you'd agree that when you say it was 2 text messages, they're both with regard to the same subject, correct?
what do you mean? I'm following
It
you.
says get over here, right? The second is a continuation of that. If not, I'm going to fuck up your lawn, correct?
You mean that's to tell him to come over to the waterfall?
Right.
I just didn't understand what you meant.
That's fine. So you're telling John O'Keefe this, correct?
Yeah, I'm telling him to come over and meet us.
All right. That little emoji, that face emoji after, if not, I'm going to fuck up your lawn, that's
It's a laughing face.
right. So you're
a joke.
saying you're cracking up.
Yeah, it's a joke. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry. Apologize.
We can take that down. At about 10:45 p.m. or so, I believe you testified, that was when John O'Keefe walked into the bar with his girlfriend, Karen Read.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
Would you agree with me that between the time you arrived and the time you eventually left, that you did go up to the bar within that establishment a few times
I'm sure he did.
and bought a few rounds of drinks,
I'm sure.
including that one round of fireball shots?
Correct.
What was the state of your sobriety when John and Karen arrived?
Probably fine. Fine.
You didn't feel intoxicated or unable to perceive what's going on. You were still in control of your faculties.
Yes.
Is it true that after John and Karen arrived, that your wife, Julie, didn't want to stay any longer or too much longer?
She didn't want to. She had a headache, so she wanted to go home.
By that point in time, you had been there about an hour, maybe a little less,
When Karen and John arrived? Yeah, about an hour.
and you were having fun.
Sure.
So Julie drove home, but you stayed, correct?
Correct.
All right. In terms of Karen Read's drinking, as far as you could see, she had that glass that she came in with that appeared to have a clear liquid in it, correct?
Correct.
I believe you said either a lime or a lemon.
Thought I said a lime, but yeah.
You assumed that was vodka and soda water or vodka in some type of mixer, correct? It was clear?
Correct.
If she was, while drinking that night, if she was mixing in water in between alcoholic drinks, it would have been impossible for you to discern which drinks were water and which drinks were vodka, correct?
Yeah, I would have no idea.
You can't tell that by eyeballing a drink, right?
No.
Because both liquids are clear.
Yes.
In order to discern that, you'd actually have to be given a sip to see, right? But in any case, Karen did not appear to be under the influence of alcohol to you.
I didn't notice anything.
She wasn't stumbling, correct?
Nope.
She wasn't swaying.
I didn't notice.
She didn't appear to be unbalanced, correct?
I didn't notice anything.
She wasn't slurring her words. She wasn't talking gibberish, correct?
No.
She was engaging in normal conversation and she appeared to be under control.
Yeah.
Would you agree with me that she also appeared to be affectionate with John O'Keefe?
I wasn't really watching their interactions too much, to be honest.
But in any case, you never saw any arguing between the two of them.
I wasn't really paying attention to their interactions.
You didn't perceive any tension between them, correct?
I didn't notice anything irregular.
From your observations of Karen Read that night, and you were there probably over 2 hours, were you not?
Total? About that, yeah.
From your observations of Karen that night, you would have had no problem with her driving a car, correct?
I wouldn't even have thought about it.
Would you agree with me that of the group that you had met out, that you were the last person to leave the waterfall on January 29th of 2022?
I believe so.
You testified on direct examination today, I believe, that you thought you got home between 12:05 and 12:10 on January 29th, correct?
That's what I remember.
If I suggested to you that you didn't even leave the bar until 12:13 a.m., would you quarrel with that?
Would I quarrel with it?
Yes.
No, I guess not.
Is your memory exhausted as to the precise time that you left the bar?
Is it exhausted?
In other words, do you not remember the precise time that you left the bar that early morning?
It's over 2 years ago. I don't know the precise time.
Right.
That's why I said between 12:05 and 12.
That answers my question. Thank you. Could we have, with the court's permission, can I publish Exhibit 3? It's a short clip from the waterfall. Sure. Can we pause it for a second, please? Mr. Elliott, you would agree with me, this was clearly the end of the night.
Sure.
The lights are all on at this point.
Yes.
The bar appears to have largely emptied out.
Yes.
Continue, please. Pause it. There we go. My co-counsel much better at this than I. Do you know who that person is who's leaving the bar at this point at 12:13 and 43 a.m.?
Christine, it might be better without that spotlight. Can you see it now?
Yeah, I believe it's me.
Having now viewed that video with the timestamp of 12:13 and about 3 seconds or so, does that refresh your memory as to when you left the waterfall?
Yes.
That would mean it would have been impossible for you to get home to Maple Street by 12:05 or 12:10, correct?
Correct.
It was about maybe a 7-minute walk home. Would you agree with me?
From Waterfall to Maple? No, I said 7 minutes from D to Waterfall. Waterfall to Maple is probably less than 5 minutes.
So it's your testimony that D is closer to the waterfall than the waterfall is to Maple Street?
Deanie's farther away from Waterfall than farther away from where I lived. Waterfall is. I don't follow you. I'm sorry.
I'll try to clarify. I don't mean to be confusing.
It's fine.
I'm not asking about the distance between D&E and your home. I'm trying to compare or ask you to compare the distance between D&E and the waterfall. The waterfall, you see the difference? So
think so.
you agree with me that your home is farther from the waterfall than D&E Pizza is from the waterfall?
I don't follow you. I'm sorry.
So let's take it step by step. D&E Pizza to the waterfall. Are they on the same street?
Yes,
How many establishments are between D&E Pizza and the waterfall?
just a few.
So it's a very short walk from D&E Pizza to the waterfall.
Yes,
Correct? Your home on Maple Street is not on the same street as the waterfall, correct?
it's off of the same street.
But it's not on the same street. Your home on Maple Street is farther from the waterfall than D&E Pizza is to the waterfall. Is it not?
Correct, correct. I didn't understand it earlier.
No, I know it. I'm trying to work through this because, again, I'm not trying to trick you here. I just want to get the answer. You would agree with me that it would take you longer to walk home from the waterfall than it would take you to walk to the waterfall from D&E Pizza?
Correct.
All right. I believe you said that one walk was 7 minutes and one walk was maybe less than 5 minutes, correct?
Yes,
All right. The 7-minute walk would have been the walk home as opposed to the walk to the waterfall, correct?
yes,
All right. So you have agreed that you left the bar at 12:13, almost 12:14, according to the video, and it would have taken you about 7 minutes to walk home, correct?
not exactly sure how. I
Can I
think
see Counselor Tadpole for just a second, please?
It's been pointed out to me that I think we're not making a connection here. I think it might be my fault. With regard to the timing of how long it took you to go home, I believe your best estimate is about 5 minutes? Is that your testimony? When I say home, I'm not talking about from D&E Pizza. I'm talking about that early morning when you're at the waterfall.
I understand. Yeah, I'd say around 5 minutes. I think from the waterfall to Maple Street.
Fair enough. So now if you're leaving the bar at close to 12:14, as indicated on the video, you're getting home somewhere around 12:19, 12:20, correct?
Roughly, yeah.
What were you wearing that night?
Blue jeans, sneakers, I think, and a sweatshirt.
It had started to snow by that point.
A little bit.
So the ground was a little bit either slushy or wet.
Not slushy, but could have been wet.
Could have been wet. The snow had not yet started to accumulate, or had it?
It didn't start. No.
All right. You're walking home, but it was cold, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree that in the best case scenario, you might have had a little bit more clothing on for that cold walk?
I think I had a sweatshirt on.
But you could have used something else, right?
Oh, probably.
In light of the weather?
Probably.
All right. Because you testified that by the time you got home, you were pretty cold, right?
Correct.
You hadn't, if it had been about a 5-minute walk, that was enough time for you to walk in almost shivering, correct?
Sure.
Given that there was precipitation, that the snow had started, the sweatshirt would absorb the moisture as opposed to repel it, correct?
Sure.
So you were wet as well when you walked in, right?
Sure.
By that point in time, you were tired, correct?
I don't remember if I was tired, but I don't remember if I was tired at that point.
You had worked all day
Correct.
till late in the day, actually into the evening, correct?
Correct.
Taking pizzas in and out of the hot oven,
Correct.
as well as other food that you serve as well, correct?
Yep.
You're now, and by the way, you'd had a couple of drinks or a few drinks, whatever it was, at the waterfall, correct?
Correct.
You decided not to go to your brother Brian Albert's house.
Correct.
That was in part because you weren't up for the continued partying at that point, correct?
Yeah, I just wanted to go home.
So when you got home, would you agree with me that your first priority would have been getting out of the wet clothes that you were in?
Correct.
Where would you have done that?
In my bedroom.
Is this a townhouse or is it a freestanding residence?
It's a condominium.
How many floors?
There's 3 floors.
Your bedroom's on the top floor?
Correct.
The entrance is ground level?
Correct.
When you first entered the home in those wet clothes, where was your wife, Julie?
Upstairs in the bedroom.
Was she already washed up and ready for bed?
She was lying in bed.
Where did you go when you walked in the ground level?
I went up to the bedroom,
All right.
took off my clothes, jumped in bed.
Do you have a master bath with regard to your bedroom?
There's a bathroom, yeah.
All right. That would have been where you brushed,
Yeah.
washed up.
But I did, that's where I would do those things, but I didn't do them. No.
Did you grab a drink of water before you went to bed?
Nope.
All right. So you essentially came home, and I think we agreed it was around 12:20 or so, give or take a minute.
Roughly.
you made a beeline for your bedroom.
Correct.
Did you fall asleep shortly thereafter?
Soon after,
Within 5 minutes or so?
I started to doze off. I don't know exactly how soon after I fell asleep.
All right. Sometime within 5 or 10 minutes, you say?
I would say more within 15 minutes.
15 minutes. With regard to getting home, and we'll call it 12:19, because I think that's more consistent with what you said, understanding that it's just an estimate. If you're walking in the door 12:19, it takes you maybe a minute to get upstairs.
About a minute.
You kicked off your sneakers downstairs, I imagine.
Maybe. I don't remember. That was a long time ago.
You walked up 2 flights of stairs. Right?
Probably ran up the stairs because I was cold.
All right. So you're getting up there around 12:20 or so, correct?
Roughly, yeah.
You believe that you dozed off about minutes later, which would have made it about 5?
Somewhere around there.
When you came home, you would agree with me that your son, Colin Albert, was not, correct?
Not when I first got home.
In fact, I think your testimony was that minutes after you got home, he opened the bedroom door.
I think that's what I said, yeah.
Do you want to stick with that?
I'm just trying to recollect what I thinking it over. So obviously it was a little bit longer.
Because you actually woke up when he opened the bedroom door, correct?
I don't think so.
Did you not just testify before this jury just, I don't know, maybe an hour, that you fell asleep and that your son Colin opened the bedroom door and woke you up to say goodnight?
Yeah, I guess that's what I said.
When you testified to that on direct examination, that was when Mr. Lally was asking you questions, correct?
Correct.
You knew that you were under oath at that time, correct?
Correct.
You were trying to be as accurate as possible, correct?
Trying to be correct.
All right. In terms of the timing of this, assuming that he opened the bedroom door after you already fell asleep, if you're getting home upstairs to your bedroom around 12:20 and it takes you 15 minutes to go to bed, that's around 12:35, then sometime after you're asleep, after 12:05, that's when you open the bedroom door, correct?
I don't remember exactly.
Well, it's difficult for you to remember how long you'd been asleep for when Colin opened the bedroom door, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or longer, correct?
I don't know exactly.
Right, but it was some time after you fell asleep.
To the best of my recollection.
With regard to your son Colin, he obviously lived in the same neighborhood as John O'Keefe because that's where your family lived, correct?
Correct.
Back in 2022, Colin Albert was 17 years old.
Correct. Part of the year.
You knew that, like most teenagers, Colin drank alcohol with his buddies, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain for the jury who or what is Nebercracker?
What is Nebercracker?
Yes,
Like the character?
that's what I'm asking.
It's a character in a cartoon called Monster House.
Would you agree with me that Nebercracker in the movie Monster House was this kind of old curmudgeon who didn't want anybody on his lawn, correct?
The character, yes.
He was the get off my lawn guy, correct?
In the movie, yeah.
What was your nickname and your wife's name for John O'Keefe?
Mr. Nebercracker.
All right. Your wife, Julie, actually had John O'Keefe plugged into his contacts as Nebercracker, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you were there one time when Julie showed Karen Read, her phone to show how John O'Keefe was plugged in as Nebercracker, correct?
I believe so.
This whole nickname started because of a conflict that Colin Albert had with John O'Keefe.
Not correct.
John O'Keefe complained to you about things that Colin was doing.
Not correct.
He would tell you that Colin used to throw beer cans or beer bottles in his bush, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
You can answer that. What's your answer?
That is not correct.
John O'Keefe told you that Colin used to flip him off, correct?
Not correct.
And say F you to him.
Never.
Colin used to cut through his yard.
Nope, that was Dylan.
You knew that John didn't like people cutting through his yard, correct?
No, I don't know that to be true.
So is it your testimony that John O'Keefe invited kids to cut through his lawn all the time?
I don't understand. Is that a question?
It was a question. Let me withdraw that and ask this. If O'Keefe is Nebercracker and he's the get off your lawn guy, are you denying that he doesn't like people cutting through his lawn?
Do you want me to, can I explain?
I just asked for an answer to my question. Mr. Lally will get up after I'm done, and I'm sure you can explain whatever you want.
So no, he's not a, no.
All right. You would agree with me that there was a time when John O'Keefe was not home that you and your wife Julie went to his house.
That is correct.
You entered onto his property, correct?
On his front property, yes.
You had drinks in your hand.
Correct.
You thought it would be funny to have a photo taken of you and your wife with drinks in your hand on his property, correct?
Correct.
You knew it would be funny because you knew it would annoy him, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh, you can go ahead.
He was actually asking us to watch his house while he was away.
But that doesn't answer my question, which was, he didn't ask you to go onto his property with drinks in your hand and take a photo, correct?
He asked us to watch his property.
But again, in answer to my question, the answer is no, he did not ask us to go on his property and take pictures of ourselves with drinks in our hand, correct?
Yeah, he didn't ask me to send him a photo.
You would agree with me that Nevercracker wouldn't like a photo of somebody on his lawn with drinks in their hands, correct?
The cartoon character, Nevercracker?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain. Next question, please.
Yes.
Ms. Giannetti? Yes.
Mr. Albert, I place two photographs before you. If you take a look at those and tell the jury if you recognize what they depict.
I do.
What do those photos depict?
It's me and my wife straddling John's fence. We're giving a thumbs up in one of them and a smile in another one.
You say John's fence, so that's actually on John's property, correct?
Part of it is, yeah. I don't know what the easement is from the street to the fence as ownership goes, but yeah, I know the town owns a certain portion of it.
Would you agree with me that it was taken in April of,
I'm not sure when it was taken, but if that's what you have for a date, then
who took that picture?
that's a good question. I have no idea.
Where was your son Colin that night when you had that picture?
I have no idea.
Would you agree with me that you texted those photos or somebody texted those photos, whether it was you or your wife Julie, to John O'Keefe?
Absolutely.
Are those a fair and accurate representation of photos that you took?
Yeah.
All right, I would offer those, Your Honor.
All right, any objection?
No, Your Honor.
With the court's permission, may they be published for the jury? With regard to that first photo, is that, well, first of all, whose house is that in the background?
That's John's.
That is you on the right and your wife Julie on the left?
Correct.
The second photo? That is also John's house in the background there?
Correct.
Again, that's you on the right and Julie on the left, correct?
Correct.
Take that. Would you agree with me that those photos give some context to the text that you sent him on January 28th when you were trying to get him to come out and you threatened to, quote, fuck up his lawn if he didn't come out that?
What do you mean give context to it?
In other words, here you are texting him photos of you and your wife on his lawn, correct?
Yes.
And that's a common theme that explains the January 28th text where you were threatening to fuck up his lawn, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
I just have one more area that I want to cover, sir. You previously confirmed that when you walked in your door on January 29th of 2022, after coming home from the waterfall, your son Colin was not home, correct?
It's correct.
At that time, you had no personal knowledge of where he had been that night, correct?
That's correct.
Since that time, you know that he was at your brother Brian's house that night, Brian Albert,
It's correct.
your old home, correct?
Where I grew up. Yep.
You knew that address to be 34 Fairview Road.
Correct.
You knew that was the same house outside which John O'Keefe was found dead later that morning, correct?
Correct.
Just one other question, sir. When you spoke to Trooper Proctor on February 10th of 2020, you would agree with me that you never mentioned that Colin Albert was at your brother Brian's house that night, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh,
I don't remember.
thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Albert, you were asked some questions about being selectman. Were you a selectman at the time on January 20th?
No.
How long after that was it that you came?
Sometime in April that the election was over. April, second week in April, maybe?
That photograph that you were shown with respect to yourself and the former Chief Berkowitz of police, when was that?
It was a fundraiser. It was probably like 2 or 3 weeks before the election. January, February, March something, end of March, maybe?
Well after January 28th.
Yes.
You were asked some questions about your brother selling the house. Prior to your brother selling the house, you had sold your house, correct?
Correct.
And why was
Why was that? It just it made sense for us. It was just this financial decision.
kids were getting older, is that correct?
Yeah,
One was in the Navy.
Yep.
Another was about to go to college.
correct.
What, if any, relation did that have to your brother selling the house?
So once he found out that I was selling
Objection.
once he found out I was selling my house, he decided that it might be a good idea for him to sell his house. His kids were getting older. So I gave him my real estate's number, the guy who sold my house.
That selling of the house, was that something that you had discussed with your brother prior to January 2022?
Yes,
With regard to your son Colin, when he came home that night, you indicated that it was about 10 minutes after. Now, was that 10 minutes after you arrived home or 10 minutes after you got in?
10 minutes after I jumped into bed.
With reference to your son Colin, he came home, you saw him that night, correct?
When he came home?
Yes.
Yeah, he just leaned his head in the door.
When he leaned into the door, did you, similar to what I had asked you about Mr. O'Keefe, did you observe any sort of injuries or anything like that to his face? You saw him the next day as well?
Yes,
Did you observe any injuries to him at any point in
None.
time? You mentioned that you went over to your brother Brian Albert's house and both he and Mr. Higgins, correct?
correct.
As far as your interactions with both Brian Albert and Brian Higgins that following day, what, if any, injuries did you observe on them?
None.
With regard to the Never Cracker, what was the origination of that?
It's a joke. So my son Dylan, who is my littlest one, he was cutting across John's lawn one day, coming home from the school, walking. This was before John had a fence that went this way on Pleasant Street. So it would just cut off like a couple of minutes. He ran across John's lawn one day. This is my littlest son, who I don't even know at the time. He might have been 9, 10. I'm not sure exactly how old he was. John yelled something to him. Hey, kid, get off my lawn. So John was just making a joke. So Dylan got scared. He ran home and told my wife, Julie. And then Julie in turn called Jen maybe and said, hey, I just yelled at Dylan. And I think Jen reached out to John and John felt terrible. John came down the street. John asked what kind of candy Dylan liked. John brought Dylan a bag of candy and just said, hey, I was just kidding. It was just, so from that point on, we called him Mr. It was a joke between John. John thought it was funny.
As far as those photographs that indicated on his fence sent to him when he was away, is that correct?
Correct.
And that was after he'd actually watched how he was away?
Yeah.
How did he respond to those photographs?
He thought it was hilarious. We actually showed him and other people that photo too. They thought it was funny.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up, Mr. Lau.
One last question. So after you sent the text message as far as to come over here and then made the reference to his lawn, what do you think? Came over to walk?
Yeah, he came over after.
All right, you are all set.
Thank you.